Talk about our principle, our first range that we've launched, our first mass-produced tile range launched with Parkside. Great, thanks for the invite from Parkside to come and talk to you. I thought what would be quite good is just to give you a bit of an introduction about Elucid itself. Which is the company we formed with my colleague Dave Binns, and it was founded to create beautiful and sustainable products from unwanted materials, and desire to use the recycled materials themselves to inform the materiality of the products that we make, so that informs the aesthetic of the products. And we started the project when the project was actually the company was founded as a result of a research project called The Aesthetic of Waste, which was funded by the HRC, and we went out to around 100 different sites all across the UK looking at waste streams that were generated across the glass and ceramic industry and the foundation, mining and paper and chemical industries. Materials which are really difficult for these companies to dispose of, either because they represent a health and safety risk, or they have some contamination that they can't recycle them within their own processes. Often these materials get used in really low value applications like land that end up being used in fiberglass production or in fillers and concrete, and in the worst cases they cost these companies money to dispose of the material. But they've got huge amounts of embodied energy in those materials, and so we thought that these materials could be used to make new architectural products. So we started the project, and this is kind of where it started. This is some of the very early tests that we did on taking materials that were found and combining them together to make products. So as you can see, there was some experimentation along the way to create the product. And then we spun the company out with the help of a company called Frontier IP and established a production facility in Preston, where we were able to make a number of different products, from solid surfaces all the way to tiles. I'm just going to take you through some of the examples of some of the products we've made over the last few years for customers pretty much all around the world. This was for H&M COS in Warsaw, and it's kind of our take on concrete, but you can see the variation in the product, changing colours, and that comes from the recycled material, which actually informs the variation in the product's finish. We make a number of large-scale tables. These were made for Koya. These are 1.2 square metres and our take on kind of lava stone effects. We've done a number of projects for Nando's in the country. Some examples of some of the work that we've done. And that led us to a conversation with Parkside and Tops Group to launch a range called Sipo Vibe. And we launched that, I think, believe it or not, back in 2019, so it's still very nice to see it up on the stands up there. You can have a look at it yourself. And it was our first foray into making product. We knew we needed to be able to scale up the production, because this was it's a handmade product, and it's still a very beautiful product, but it needs to be, we needed to know how to scale up the production to be able to make that scale, because that's the most sustainable way to make ceramic tiles. And ceramic tiles themselves aren't really or create a huge amount of CO2. That is just a fact of production. The extraction of raw materials is energy and transport intensive, and materials processing is all done at high temperatures and uses large volumes of gas. And there aren't really many viable alternatives to natural gas, and they're certainly not proven at scale. So there's lots of different ways of calculating it, but you can see an average typical floor tile is roughly 15 kilos CO2, which is roughly, a weight of a floor tile can be roughly 20 kilos. So you can see there's a large amount in there. The thing about floor tiles, or all tiles, is they do last for a very long time. So the length of time that you can expect a ceramic tile to last for, I think that in most life cycles they put 50 years, but the first tiles were invented by Mesopotamia and in Egypt, and some of those tiles that are still visible, that you can still walk on those tiles. So installed correctly, tiles have an extremely long lifetime, and so that embodied carbon over that length of time starts to reduce. But the thing is, what we need to be able to do is and I'm not going to, this is quite sciencey, but what we need to be able to do is to reduce the amount of energy that we're using to make those tiles. And this is some data from the climate change. and they plotted the amount of carbon abatement strategies. And the interesting thing, just to talk about this, that a lot of these technologies, you see here, all of these carbon capture and storage, electrification, hydrogen, all require a huge amount of new technology to be invented, so they don't actually start to become impactful until 2035. So everything on the top left-hand side here is all stuff that we need to do about reducing resources and reducing energy used, and that's all technology that exists already. So that's where Lucid tries to come in. So you can see here that the reduction in energy efficiency actually contributes more than each of the individual things: hydrogen, electrification, or carbon storage and capture, or magic vacuum cleaners, which is why I like to think of carbon storage and capture, because I'm not sure that's actually going to result in massive reduction. So what we've got to do is to reduce the amount of energy that we use to manufacture them. And so that's what Lucid's interested in doing. That's what we're on the start of the journey with Principle. So Principle is our first mass-produced recycled tile body using recycled materials from across the glass and ceramic industry. And different from what other companies do, we don't have our own factories, so we're sourcing our raw materials from other manufacturers and materials which are coming from the end of production. So fully recycled, not just recycling our own waste within the process. So this is our first range, and I'm going to talk about our next range, or what I hope will be our next range, which will be launched on the park side. It's available in 4 colours, with a classic sort of Victorian-inspired palette, single brick format, and so you can see some examples of our range up there. Principle is made from 4 primary raw materials. So we get waste material from the tableware and stoneware industry, so manufacture of it's a waste sludge. Edge grinding waste from the tile production, so that's from other manufacturers who produce tiles, and often they're rectified or finished. Almost all porcelain tiles will have some rectification or edge finishing, and so that often ends up being waste material that ends up in landfill. Post-consumer, so the lime glass, which allows us to reduce the temperature used for our product and also adds a decorative finish to the product. And then vitrified ceramic picture, which is a form of cordierite material, which is a byproduct of tableware and other factory industries in Spain. It's all sourced locally in Spain and processed with our partners, production partners in Spain. We started off the project in the UK, sourcing the material in the UK, but then COVID, Brexit, and all sorts of different things happened along the way. And so we ended up sourcing the material and working with partners in Spain. And this is just some of the kind of work that we've done along the way. So because our material is very different from some of the existing or traditional materials, we have to do some modifications, some dark arts in the pressing. And our material doesn't flow as well as other materials, so we've had to do a lot of work on making our material manage its way through the production cycle. But it's important that we're able to make it on existing equipment, because that allows us to scale up production and means we don't have to build an entire new production facility to be able to make our products. So because that wouldn't be a sustainable solution to build an entire brand new tile factory when there are already a number of existing tile factories with capacity. So that's back in January 2020, which was actually our first full-scale production of raw material sourced in the UK, and then there's a number of different things happened along the way which changed our thinking along the way. So that's me smiling and pleased, but then we have had a number of hiccups along the way, because you'll notice it's 2023 now, and we're just launching this product, so we've had some challenge stuff. But I would just talk through some of the challenges that we've had along the way. So we've had issues with glaze going in behind some of our larger particles of raw material, and that produced faults where the glaze was coming up, so we had to change the particle sizes. We've had issues with crazing, so we had, obviously you get tiles which have deliberate crazing, but we had to resolve issues with thermal expansion between the tile. And then we had glaze bubbles which formed in some of the glazes, which we had to resolve as well. And all these have been challenges that are not, you wouldn't find in normal raw materials, but because of our recycled material, we had to adjust them along the way. So we started off, our first was 95%. But by the time we got all the way through to get to a product which we're absolutely happy production and scale, it's actually 91.3% recycled now. So some compromise on the way, but with our floor tile, we're looking to rectify them and get back up to a higher percentage. So the tile body itself is 95% recycled with a 5% non-recycled base. We have a reduced energy in the manufacture of the product of around 23%, which comes from partly a reduction of the firing temperature because of our combination of raw materials, but also in reduced amount of energy that's used because we're using recycled materials. So these are our internal calculations based on comparing it to a similar production, exact same product, or comparing apples with apples. So every square metre of principal develops around 8 kilograms from landfill, and hopefully you agree they're unique tiles which are formed by the unique raw materials which make them. And that's an important thing that we think we've taken through from the product which we made by hand in the UK all the way through to the product which is made by machines at scale. It's fully UK CA and CE compliant, and you can use it just with almost every single standard production or cutting equipment, installing adhesives and all that. So it's important that it is made from recycled materials but conforms to all the normal standards you'd expect. What I wanted to do now is just to talk about what's coming soon. So we've been on a journey to make our wall tile, our first range of wall tiles, but we're now looking at developing first range of floor tiles. So this product is currently in development and will hopefully be ready for launch towards the end of this year. All being well, we've got a number of different tests that's going on, and I'm going out to Spain tomorrow for the next series of tests. But we've got quite a big aim for this product, and we want to try and reduce substantially, massively increase from that 23% to 70% saving of the CO2. And what we're going to be doing is deploying a dry blending technology. So in traditional ceramic tile production, we use a process called spray drying, and they make all the materials together, they blend them with water and they ball mill them down. And then they have to dry them with natural gas, which produces the powder that they make the tiles out of in machines. And that has to be dried from around 30% moisture down to 5% moisture, and uses roughly, depending on where you are, roughly the same amount of energy as you use to fire the tiles. So by taking that out of the equation, we reduce the amount of energy substantially. We also use a fraction of the amount of water, which in Spain has become an absolutely huge issue. Water, as we've seen, we've seen a lot of droughts there. So it's going to become an increasing issue in Spain, but also in other tile manufacturing areas. So we think it really is the future. It's a single firing process, and it's again hydraulically pressed and glazed in the same way as we manufacture our wall tile. We're working with Innovate and the Ship University to do a full life cycle analysis. So they're doing the work on the full life cycle analysis of the production of the floor tile, and we'll be working towards VPD from the production of our first wall tile. So independently verifying all of our calculations on this. So this is our calculations, but we are working with an external organisation to validate them. So the floor tile is going to be a high performance floor tile, so we're suitable for commercial applications with a minimum R10 plus resistance value. It's a lightly glazed product, kind of matte. I've got some samples here that you can see of the production of the product in process. And some different colours that we're looking at, so they'll be coloured all the way through the tile body. We're achieving porcelain standard strength, but it's a vitrified tile, so it's less than 3% water absorption. So it's not suitable for external applications, but it's suitable for commercial. We're also working towards, not for this range, but in the future we're looking at digital printing and full capacity, so you fairly able to start tile different from other technologies, adding technical issues. So yeah, that's the exciting bits that are coming up from Elucid, and hopefully that's a quick overview of everything that Elucid does and what we're going to do in the future.
spreads you looking at when you floor tiles?
So the one we've got, I think it's R10 Plus. So
Is it?
the test we did, the last one we did, which really wasn't exactly what we're going to go, was around 45 on the slip resistance test.
Short.
Yeah, short.
As opposed to so on a 96 line.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you going to do any tests in the 55 line?
Yeah, I think that what we're working with VRES as the glaze manufacturer, so we haven't got the temperature right, that's part of the testing that I'm doing at the end of this week. So once we've got it through a full production, we'll test it. But yeah, we work with a lab, the company that we work with manufactures has their own slip resistant test. We also work with a lab in Castle. No, they use pendulum, both are doing Vidras have pendulum. Vidras have showed me you can walk up their glaze on wet, so even on an angle, so we're confident it'll achieve the full slip resistance. But we've got to make sure it meets that cleanability test, so that it's there's no point in having a very high slip resistance if it gets dirty and grimy in 5 minutes after you install it. So we're looking to try and thread the needle between those two.
There's a balance between it being not so textured, and then it's maybe PTV out the box, but how long does it stay PTV?
Exactly. So I think those are tests that we're going to have to do, but that's more or less all entirely down to the glaze.
Yeah, sure.
So the texture of the tile can add some, adding some texture to the face of the tile. Can help with that, but it's mostly down to the glaze. The glaze manufacturer we're using is one of the biggest in Spain. So
that is the goal. Right there, that is.
Yeah, it's
how your home surface samples being fast.
Yeah.
Generating data, as I said, always close.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the first floor tile is going to be 20 by 20. It's going to be a kind of a quarry tile type of thing. So I've got some. This is the first example. It's got a slight bone on the finish. I'm not sure we're going to do that one. But this is the first one, and you can feel it's like a very granular finish. And then we're looking at three colours. So it'll be a 20 by 20 and also a 20 by 10 as a kind of wall and floor. Yeah, it's got a slight. Yeah. Let's see where you can't keep that because then you compare it with when I get on this one.
Interesting.
So we've got like a slight grain in the finish, but yeah. So